every differently abled person has a different story. They have, and different dreams and goals and different, they're just as human as everybody else. And sometimes I think that's forgotten, or it's kind of expected to they're expected to either be an inspiration or to be like a depressing, mad person. Like there's no just halfway in between. It's like somebody is either miserable or they're, an inspiration. And, the truth is, like, we're all just people, and we have good days and we have bad days. And, and that's kind of the focus of a PSA that we're trying to put together. That's We Are Just Like You. That's the focus on that, is to, we're hoping to gather different 5 to 15-second videos from differently abled individuals, to showcase their, if they're inspirational or funny or just real to life, whatever it may be. And we're going to compile them into a little PSA, just to show people that, yeah, we are just like you. It doesn't always have to be, just about our accidents or our illnesses or our, birth defects or our, anything else that might make somebody differently able. We are human beings, and yes, that's where the focus needs to shift to. I think for so long, because of for so long in history, some differently abled people were kind of swept under the rug. They were kept at home. They didn't get out much. And so now, it was only in the 70s that the American Disabilities Act was established. And, we started being able to get more housing rights and transportation rights to be able to get buses and buildings and all those things. These things are just now happening, and, and institutions being shut down. But for so long, if somebody was differently abled, a lot of times they were institutionalized. They weren't expected to have any goals or be able to be contributing members of society. It wasn't expected of them. And still somewhat isn't expected of the majority of us that are differently abled. It's like if someone's differently abled, then they don't do nothing. And that is not true for a great majority of the community. And, it would be nice to have that portrayed more as well. It is definitely, I feel, a huge need. And it comes with time and the shift. And like I said, some of these changes, it's only been 40 years. It hasn't even been 50 years yet to where we've started seeing some of the rights and stuff that we need just to be able to function in society, with businesses having to be accessible, or apartments or housing having to be accessible, which there still isn't enough. And that's a whole nother subject that I could get into. But all these things, it's the shift, and it comes with education, and it comes with differently abled people standing up for themselves and starting to really show the world what we are capable of. And that just because there may be something, that you can see that is blatantly obvious, that you can see something that is wrong with someone, or sometimes, some things aren't as obvious, and people have more hidden disabilities, but those things, I think, luckily, we're coming into a society where we're becoming more open in discussing those things, and some of the stigma that was related with having a disability or having a mental illness or having an immune deficiency. A lot of those things people didn't talk about, 50 years ago. That wasn't a thing that people were open to discussing and open to sharing their stories as much as they are now. And with the reality TV craze that started in the early 2000s everybody sharing their stories, and people really getting to see the more human side of everyone. Um, so I think that now is a great time to be doing what we're doing. Like I said, with the whole movement with representation matters, that's kind of, we're kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, and just shining a light in a little corner that I think a lot of people tend to forget about, or they don't have the expectations. It's not expected for, like I said, the differently abled community to have the goals and aspirations and ambitions that other able-bodied people have.
Jonni, it sounds to me, and you said one word, which was stigma. Let me throw another one in there, which is also taboo. It sounds like these are stigmas and taboos that need to be addressed and torn down through exposing people to the people that are differently abled as just that, first and foremost, just people, right? Because
Exactly.
we've seen all the other things, other topics, and not that it's the same thing at all, but the Me Too movement, also things like suicide. These are all things or taboos or stigmas, but more taboos, I guess that would be the word, but you know what I'm getting at, that need to be talked about in order to be deconstructed, to see the topics, and more importantly the people behind these taboos that need to be given exposure. And in the realm of the arts, a lot of times that exposure can be literal film exposure, from what I'm seeing. I mean, because I don't know. I mean, that's that. I just think it needs to be deconstructed as far as taboos and whatnot go, because a big personal one for me, for a few personal reasons, is suicide prevention, just the topic of suicide and suicide awareness. But you don't
I agree.
you
I
don't
also,
address the people if we're not first talking about it and getting exposure to these stories, and these people and their very human stories, etc., right? So I mean, that's kind of the way I see it. Am I wrong in saying that's the way that it should be seen, as like any other stigma or any other taboo, that it does need to be addressed?
yeah, no, I agree 100%. I'm a believer that, people need to talk about things, that it needs to be shared. The more people keep, to themselves, then the less likely it is that it's going to help be beneficial to them. And it definitely can't be beneficial to anybody else who could also be struggling. And so, it is time, and I think that we've evolved enough as a culture to where we're realizing that it is time to be talking about these things, because obviously not talking about them for all these years didn't do any good. So I am glad that we're starting to see that shift, and it's starting to become more of a norm to talk about things than to not.